For this week's podcast, we want to look at the concept of I'm better than you because of whatever. And um, we kind of get this idea historically by looking at the Old Testament and the way the Old Testament has these embedded prejudices saying that we're God's chosen people and it's okay if we murder you to take your stuff. And while the history of the Jewish people actually does show us what they believed and how they behaved, that doesn't mean that their beliefs were accurate and without flaws. Some of the ways they believed about themselves is counterintuitive to the actual teachings of Jesus, which are the clarifications of God and God's love for all people. And in my book, sometimes you have to stir the pot. I do have a discussion chapter that I wrote on better than, and I just want to share this with you. Every once in a while, I find that the best way for me to address a topic is actually read an essay that I've already written on it. So this is called Better Than. And this is on page 77 and 78 of my book. Sometimes you have to stir the pot. Better than. Christians are called to be set apart for God's use in order to bless and minister to others. It is a misconception to believe that in being set apart, there is somehow a ranking that makes this group of humans better than other groups that may or may not have the same beliefs. Being called by God to live and serve others does not make one better than others. And it's not hard to understand why the Christian faith has this idea that being a Christian means that you are somehow a better human than others. Now, we could get into the calling on our lives and what we are called to do. And I guess being loving and caring to all people, being non-discriminatory, being inclusive, I guess really on some level does make you a better person than someone who does not have those things. Unfortunately, the carrying out of those things is not always indicative of being a true and honest Christian. And so when we're looking at the idea of being a Christian, saying you're a Christian doesn't mean that you're better than someone else. However, if you're comparing two people, one is loving and caring and inclusive, and the other is not, well, I could say that a caring, loving, inclusive person is a better person than someone else. But I don't think we could rank them and say, well, because of that, they are qualified for extra tax credits, or they are qualified to receive more interest in their loans on deposit at the bank. They should not receive extra rights because they are perceived as better people, or even if they actually are better people. And so it's not hard to understand where we went from studying the Old Testament people, the Israelites, the Jewish ancestors that we find in the Old Testament, and see how they believed. And there's not a whole lot of difference between those issues and problems they have, the Old Testament peoples, and modern day Christians in our world today. And that should be very alarming. I find that extremely alarming that people can claim to be a Christian and have nothing to do with the actual teachings of Jesus, who was the Christ. Next paragraph. In Luke chapter 10, we have a recording of Jesus' parable of the Good Samaritan. This followed an incident that is recorded in chapter 9, verses 51 through 56, where James and John were angry because the Samaritans did not give them the proper respect. because they had Jewish faces. James and John wanted Jesus to send down fire from heaven to kill them. Jesus' ministry and examples that followed demonstrated how Jesus taught his disciples that they were not actually better than the Samaritans, even if that idea was firmly entrenched into their cultural beliefs. One of the problems I find with modern day Christianity or modern day Christian church organizations is that it's more cultural than spiritual, and that's problematic. The belief that one group of people is somehow superior to others for any description, including Christian, opens the door for discrimination and ill treatment based on this description. This was not God's intent, nor is it currently the intent of God that Christians should look down on non-Christians. The call to be set apart is not a call to be above. The historical record of those claiming Christianity as their call to war and battle against other peoples and nations is tragically wrong. When we look back over history and see the atrocious behavior of those claiming to be Christian and the injustices that have been carried out on other people and societies, you would think that lessons have been learned. However, these categories of behavior still survive as privileged groups of people control and prevent other groups from thriving by their actions, some of which are carried out under the pretense of Christianity. God called and still calls people to love, accept, include, and embrace all people. If anyone claims to be a Christian and their actions violate this call, then they are false Christians or ignorantly brainwashed by false Christians. Christians are not special in the eyes of God, and this does not make them better than non-Christians as people in the community, deserving of special consideration or elevation. God is a God of love for all people. Being a Christian does not make you better than anyone else or give you special rights as a citizen. And we're talking about earthly existence. And I have 6 discussion questions that I included for this essay in this chapter. Number 1, if God's grace covers me and you, how can we justify not offering the same grace to others? You know, we're called to share the grace that God offers to us, and we need to demonstrate that grace in the way we deal with other people. Number 2, how does God differentiate people? Well, that's kind of a tricky question. God doesn't really differentiate, although God does call us to do some things, and we need to do that which God calls us to do. But for me, that's between me and God. For you, that's between you and God. For those people over there, that's between them and God. It's not our job to judge, evaluate, categorize, and then treat people differently based on our perceptions or or even the actual realities of other people's behaviors. Question 3. Get ready for this one. Who does your church target in ministry? Who does your church draw in? Are there some people that are excluded because of those who you target? Question 4. What groups are not represented in your church? Have you ever witnessed someone being run off from the church? Question 5. What people would you prefer were not represented at your church? Are there some people that you don't want to be at your church? Are there some people that you really don't want sitting in the same row with you? I kind of want to say something here, but I'm just going to let that sit. Question 6. Should churches have levels of membership based on certain criteria? I one time attended a church up in East Texas, and uh, they they had talked with me about officially joining the church and becoming a member, but I discovered that because I was not baptized in a church of their actual denomination, I could not be a full member of their church. Um, that was bizarre to me. If you get baptized in a church, but it's not of one particular denomination, does that somehow mean that the baptism isn't valid? Hogwash. Needless to say, I was not interested in becoming a member of that church. So anyway, so who do you think you're better than? Are there some people that you say, I'm better than that person? Based on the life lessons and teachings of Jesus, there's no way I could support some of the things that the ruling party right now is doing, and I don't understand how one could claim Christianity and be a supporter of those things, because uh, just looking, I mean, there's lots to look at in the Bible, but if you just look at the story of the Good Samaritan, I don't know how much clearer it could be. Well, thank you for watching this episode. Um, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. No matter what bad examples we see in the Old Testament, uh, we see where Jesus tried to reteach those bad things to his disciples, specifically in our discussion on this video with James and John, and tried to get them to rid themselves of this inbred prejudices that they had, that they were better because they were Jewish, they were God's chosen people. Americans are not God's chosen people. Particular groups of Christians are not God's chosen people. Uh, Christians are not a cultural group, so they can't be a chosen people, because all people are invited to the grace that God offers. So, thank you for watching. Have a good week.